Welcome to the Origins of New Hope series. This is Cindy Farrington, founder and director of New Hope Ministry here in Centerville, Iowa. I am Shauna Llewellyn. And last time Cindy talked about the earlier start of New Hope and how God called her to start this ministry and some of the miracles that happened along the way. And so today she's talking about the next two miracle locations of New Hope.
Okay, yeah, so we were in our first location. We talked about that in the last video, how God had provided. A lady, the owner of a building here in Centerville, was our first location for the first 8 years. And this was her way to be a part of what we were doing with New Hope. So we were she gave us use of the total top floor of her building here in Centerville, just off the square. At no charge for 8 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. So after 8 years, God gave us a big test of our faith when the owner decided that it was time for her to sell the building. And, it was totally understandable. She was well into her retirement years and was really doing this as her contribution.
Right.
But the building just got too much for upkeep for her. And it was a really difficult decision for her because, of New Hope being there. But I knew she didn't. She couldn't come to the decision without a lot of prayer. And I knew that the Lord was telling her to do it, that it was time. And it was for our benefit too, that he was seeing if we were really going to trust him to take care of us in a bigger way.
Right.
So that was everything for us from the beginning was a test of faith but this was a big one because it was getting down, the building sold, and we had it was down to 30, 60 days before we had to move out, and we had no idea where God was telling us to go. But as it turned out, Dick and Jan Allen were on our board of directors at that time, and they still are today, all these years later. Dick was at that time pastoring a church in Bloomfield, Iowa, and they lived over there in the parsonage. But they owned a house in Centerville, and they had been trying to sell it for 2 years, and it had never sold. And it didn't really make sense either because it was a nice house, and it was right on the edge of town. It was surrounded, by timber. It was really secluded. We didn't really have any next door neighbors. And they let us. They came to me one day and they said, "We know now why our house is not sold."
That's crazy.
For those 2 years that it was supposed to be for New Hope to use. So they let us have use of their house, and all we had to pay was utilities. So that was a huge blessing. There was this cool screened-in porch that was above like a walkout basement. So it was like you were sitting up in the trees, and we'd have our morning coffee out there. And
cool, like a tree house.
Yeah, it was. Kind of felt like that, and
awesome.
Some of the counseling teams would use it as a counseling room since we were so secluded, and
right.
Especially during nice weather. It was just a blessing all the way around. We loved it.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds
2
perfect.
years later, Dick was no longer pastoring in at that church, and they needed their house back.
Of course.
So it was another test of faith for us.
Okay. So was this step easier? Like every time God has you do another step of faith, was it easier this time?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was, that's God's goal,
Right.
Each time it'll get a little easier for us to trust him and more
Absolutely.
completely. But there was a whole new level of trusting him on this one involved this time because the board of directors, they prayed about it and decided instead of having the possibility of having to move every couple of years, that it was time to invest in purchasing a property.
Oh, this is a big move.
Yeah, it was really big because again, we didn't have any extra money.
Right.
But there's something that I really admire about our board of directors is that they take the time to really ask God,
Right.
what they're supposed to do, what he wants for New Hope, and when they're in unanimous agreement that God is instructing them to do something, they move forward in faith to obey. And
That's
I
awesome.
just love that about them. It makes us, me and the staff feel so much more secure.
Right.
to have leaders like that. And we know that if God is telling us to do something, that He is going to provide everything we need in order to obey Him. I mean, that is a definite.
Right.
And He had to get us to the place where we really know that we know that we know that that's true. And
Right.
He'll give us what we need to obey. So we started looking for a place to purchase in Centerville, and it was just me and the other two main staff people at that time doing the looking. And we looked at a lot of places, and I remember one house was in such bad shape. And when we got back to the car, we just sat there and cried.
Oh no.
And prayed, but what we said to the Lord was, Lord, if this is the place that you provide for us, we will accept it gratefully, and we'll be so thankful. And then we cried some more.
Oh, no.
But we really meant that.
Right.
And I know God knew that.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that does something, but there was this other house that we became aware of that was for sale. It was a really great house, and it would have been a really great God story because it was owned by some really good friends of New Hope.
Okay.
But it would take ongoing maintenance, and that was just one thing that we felt strongly that we wouldn't be able
too much at the time.
Yeah. So we knew we needed to find something that had no maintenance. That's what we were looking for, we thought at that time. Anyway, then I received a call from a pastor, and this was after we'd pretty much looked at everything that was available at that time.
God waited till you
had
checked every box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I received a call from this pastor who had this couple had moved away from Centerville 2 years previously.
Okay.
And he was calling about something totally unrelated, but in the course of conversation, I said, New Hope is looking for a place. We have to move, and we don't know where we're moving to. We're looking for a place to buy. And he said, "Hey, did you know that my house is still for sale in Centerville?" And it had been for sale for 2 years and hadn't sold. And I was starting to see a pattern there.
The 2-year pattern, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I did not know that. I had been in his house before, and I knew it was nice, So I found out from him that everything that they had done to the house while they owned it and before they were trying to sell it, they had replaced almost everything new in there, and there would be zero maintenance. So that was perfect. That was our sign, from the Lord. So I went to the board members, told them about it. It was laid out perfectly for our needs with, there was nothing that we would have to do to move in. Mm-hmm. We didn't even have to paint. It was just perfect.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so we decided as a step of faith and confirmation. We really felt like this is what the Lord was saying, but we needed confirmation, and we still had no money. So,
this is definitely a big step of faith.
Yeah, we felt like we were supposed to send out a letter to all of our mailing lists. There were like 1,200 people on the list, letting them know that New Hope had to find a new home. These were our supporters, so we just want to let them know, we've got to find a place, and God is directing us to purchase a property so that we wouldn't have to keep moving, we wouldn't have that risk.
Right.
And it was a really God set up arrangement because this pastor was going to give it to us for $60,000, and that was just what he had left to pay on his mortgage.
This market now, that's like free.
Well, this market now, I mean, back then, it was the perfect time for us to be having to look for something, but still, that was a great deal.
Absolutely.
So we just sent that out and let everybody know about it, and in 2 weeks, only 2 weeks, $12,000 had come in. So we felt like that was a definite confirmation from the Lord, and it was enough for a down payment.
That's incredible.
Yeah. But we hadn't really thought that through yet. And that was the next step. God brought in a man from one of our supporting churches, just out of the blue, stopped by to talk to me about it. and he offered to pay for the house himself and us pay him on contract at no interest.
That never happens.
No.
Like he just showed up and
He did
offered.
because he was a businessman and he knew
Right.
we probably couldn't have gotten a loan from a bank because we had no guaranteed income.
Right.
It was just donations.
Right. Absolutely.
So we didn't realize, we didn't really think about that, but God did. God knew what he was doing, and
Right.
and and in only 2 years after that all took place, we had the whole 60,000 paid off.
That's incredible.
So that was God too, and God could have paid off the whole amount at once. No problem.
Looking back though, like I've been with this ministry a little bit too. It's like at the time, the 2-year payoff was a miracle
It was a huge miracle.
for New Hope at the time.
And we knew he could have done it instantly, but he chose not to. And I know now it was because he was using it to teach us to trust him for what we needed month to month,
Right.
on a continued basis.
Gotcha.
And we didn't know that he had, bigger plans on down the road, that we would have to
Definitely
be able
trust.
to do that.
Right.
Yeah, we
right.
would have to be able to do it. So he kind of used this in teaching us that. And right as soon as we got it all paid off at the 2-year mark, it was just in time for the next instruction from God to purchase our next property. And that was the big one. That's the one that we're in now. It moved from, trusting him to provide 60,000 to this building that we're in today was over $500,000.
And that was a deal itself.
Oh my
$500,000
goodness.
was
And
a deal.
he did
Right.
so many miracles to even
Yeah.
just convince us and confirm to us that, yes, this is the one I'm saying, and I
Right.
really mean it.
Right.
And so those will be our next videos coming up in the series about how that all transpired. And they'll probably take more than one.
Yeah, that might take a few videos.
Yeah.
And like I just love being able to sit back and watch the process of all of this unfold, because it's like, who can't relate to that moment of you crying in the car? You're like, sometimes you just have to have an ugly cry with God and get back to work and just say,
Yeah.
hey, whatever you've got, we're ready for it.
And you're a big part of us, this whole process with, him moving us. What he wanted to do was move every part of our ministry under one roof.
Right.
And you were a big part of the confirmations God gave us to know what we were supposed to do and when. And it's just, it's been fun.
All the glory to God,
yeah,
for sure.
Those will be fun to share with everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's all we have for today. And we're looking forward to see you guys again. Remember, like us, love us, share us, show us your love. We really appreciate your partnership. And we absolutely need your partnership to be able to pull off the huge things that God is doing here at New Hope Ministry. Bye.